Housing affordability.
Housing affordability.
What would you do about housing affordability when it comes to people being able to buy a home or even, frankly, afford rent at this point?
What do you do for those folks?
Get rid of the regulations, mainly environmental regulations, that are making it much more expensive to build housing. So the basic cost of building is 4 or 5 times as higher in California. Number 2, we have to end the lawsuits that are making it more expensive to build housing here, because they make the whole process much longer and drawn out, and you have to go to court and fight these lawsuits. That's because of something called CEQA, the California Environmental Quality Act. That's become pretty well known. But what's not known is it's not so much the regulations in CEQA itself, it's the lawsuits from CEQA, because CEQA uniquely has something attached to it called the private right of action. All right, yes. So that means that anyone can file a lawsuit. 70% of CEQA lawsuits are used to block housing. Most of those lawsuits are filed, nothing to do with the environment, that's the pretext. They're filed by the unions, labor unions, to extract what they call project labor agreements, which require 1 or 2, or often both of these conditions: prevailing wage and what they call skilled and trained labor. Skilled and trained is a union monopoly. Prevailing wage is about 2 or 3 times higher than the market rate. That increases the cost of housing. So we've got to deal with that. The other point, and this is the one where I think no one's really focused on this, even those 2 big bills that Gavin Newsom just touted as solving the housing crisis. We're going to abolish CEQA for new housing and all this kind of stuff. It only affected what they call infill development. So housing that is within the current built environment in California. Why? Going back to what I said earlier, it's an ideology. There's this ideology of what they call density, that we can't have sprawl. They call it sprawl, right? Where you build outwards. The suburbs that California was famous for. They call it sprawl. I call it the California dream, a single family home where you can raise your family with a yard and enjoy the weather. They're against all of that. They say you can only build in the existing urban footprint. What does that mean? The price of land goes up because you're restricting the area that you can build in. And so I would get rid of all of that. That is the result of regulation. They call it VMT, vehicle miles traveled. They put these calculations in. They say, well, if you build over there, you're going to have more car journeys, vehicle miles traveled, so we're not going to allow you to do that. So we've got to relax that. And they say you've got to have density. We already have the highest density in the country. Barely 5% of our land in California is developed at all. There is plenty of room to build outwards and let people have that California dream of a home of their own. That's what I would do.
Why is housing so high here in California? Why is it unaffordable? And it is completely because of a failed political agenda of making it so high. The bureaucratic red tape in California makes housing a minimum. Well, the national average is 400, and California, or the median, 400 compared to California's 950. And a minimum of a third. I've talked to dozens and dozens and dozens of builders, from single home builders to community builders. And a minimum of a third of the price of a home is because of government red tape and regulation. Why do we have that? Because the government wants money from all the builders so they can waste it doing whatever it is they're doing. And we're seeing now there is a stated agenda. They don't want you to own homes. So if they can price you out of homes, they're forcing you into the apartment buildings that they want you to live in. They're forcing you into the affordable housing, which is a misnomer because there is nothing affordable housing. The affordable housing projects are far more expensive than private projects. They're just subsidized by the government, and those people are making more money.
So how can you as governor impact that red tape? A lot of the red tape is at the local level.
It's not. The majority of the red tape is the state level. It's the agenda of taking all of this money for the state.
Can you do that without the legislature?
100%. It's a regulation. It's not a law. And it will be taken care of on day one. And there are so many rules and regulations that are imposed upon us by non-elected officials, by non-laws, that it might take 2 days of constant signing for me to get rid of all of these so we can make it better for Californians. And the proof is, our own governor did it. And now the media, it's like glassed over, and we don't even talk about it anymore. CEQA and the Coastal Commission were completely just signed away so they could build their homes and clean up their homes in the Palisades. So the real question that no one ever asked If it was that easy for you to do it for those people, those multimillionaires that are contributing to you and that typically vote that way, they know the data, they know it was predominantly Democrat. If it was that easy for you to fix it to those people so you would save face and look good, why can you not do it for the rest of the state so we all benefit? So we can all benefit from building homes faster, because it's the time frame, the 3 to 5 years to build a home instead of 90 days, that drives up the cost of the home. That cost has to be borne by somewhere. Yeah. So if we didn't have that, these communities built in 90 days. It's possible. It was done before. We did it in California. The agenda of California is to drive the home prices up so you don't live in a home. They don't want you to own your own home. It's about, he said it on TV.
To own your own home.
He said it on TV.
The governor?
The governor is so excited, and we all watched him do his little jig about rebuilding LA 2.0. You can't deny that they have their own vision of what cities should look like, the whole 15-minute cities, and there is no home ownership. There's high rises where we all live.
Because I don't want this to be an interview about the governor. I want this to be an interview about you.
Those are all going away.
And so you're saying that's how you're going to change this.
Absolutely.
You're going to
the regulations that are preventing builders from building homes will be absolutely taken away. The cost of living absolutely will be reduced by regulation.
Of course, we need to do a better job of not over-regulating, not making permits impossible, not changing the zoning. Those are things that are critical. It's also critical that we be able to create housing much, much, much cheaper. So, of course, the start in terms of reforming CEQA, in terms of reforming zoning regulations, are important starts, but just starts. Two other things. One is, I think there are new technologies of how to build and how to manufacture homes off-site that are much cheaper. And if we build 1 million houses, that's a ton of jobs, well-paid jobs. So that's one thing, is we're gonna have to use new technology that exists, and we're gonna have to use it in size.
Yep. So the biggest thing we can do is to bring down the cost of building housing. And to do that, we have to make it faster. So I support the permitting reforms that are going to let us build more quickly. We also have to think about how can we innovate around construction and materials, climate resilience for housing. But the biggest solution is we have more jobs than housing compared to any other state in the country. So our challenges in attracting young people and retaining families and keeping retirees here, part of that is because we have failed to build housing. So I think that making it quicker is a good way to take an estimate, show about 20% off the cost. So our neighboring state, well, not neighboring, but one state over in Colorado, they can build market rate apartment housing 22 months faster than we can here in California. And they do it with good worker protections, which I support, and good labor protections that I support.
We need to remove barriers to building. We've made it far too difficult. CEQA reform still hasn't gone far enough. In San Jose, we reduced one-time fees. I think we need to cap impact fees at the city level because they're making projects infeasible. When we reduced our fees, we got thousands of new homes under construction that we had approved, but couldn't secure financing. We also need to be able to build the most accessible forms of home ownership, once again, starting with condos. Right now, it is because of our laws around construction defect and the liability that is faced, no one will finance condo construction in the state anymore. We need to put some caps on that liability so that we can actually get people investing in housing. Again, we will not succeed, we will not compete as a state as long as Colorado can build the exact same unit for half the cost. That's self-inflicted. It is a byproduct of failed public policy that we need to change, from fees, environmental review, permitting timelines, liability law, the building code. We can fix it. We're going to have to get in there and actually start reducing costs.
Yeah, we're going to build more. There's no doubt. And everyone's saying that. We're going to build smart. So that means in the densest areas of the state where most of the population is, you're not going to just do, large spreads. You're going to do going up, building up. You're going to have buildings that provide multiple housing units that are close to where the transportation hubs are. You're going to try to do it so you combine it well and you can do infrastructure around it. In places in like the Central Valley, when you get further away from the urban areas, you can spread out a little bit more. Maybe someone can afford to have a house. But we're going to have to do this smartly, because try to get home insurance these days is very difficult. And we're going to have to be real about how we take care of the insurance companies who seem to only want to take care of no-risk homes and are bailing, bailing on everyone else.
I think the legislature is moving in the right direction, the governor as well, in streamlining California Environmental Quality Act, CEQA. I think we need to do even more. I think we need to focus on zoning where multiple family dwellings are within the ambit of that zoning, and cities and counties have prevented these folks from building. I think we need an all-of-the-above approach again. That means market rate, workforce, affordable, extremely low income, and homeless housing. We needed all of the above. And again, that's the problem here. Some people think it's just one answer or just one solution. It's a multiplicity of solutions on that menu of making housing more affordable again.
I think for me, one of the things I've been exploring is that, we look at how we've been building housing and all the financing mechanisms that we have for that. What we don't look at is how do we look at the financing mechanisms to actually help us make units affordable. We know that building is expensive here in California. Most of everything that we build is probably more market rate and above. The affordable units are really a condition of what we build rather than kind of the norm that we should be building to meet the rental needs and those of working Californians. I would like to really explore the ability to look at some of the financing mechanisms to actually try to cut the cost so that we can actually be able to offer affordable units to people.
So cut the cost to build?
The cost of building is probably going to remain stable, but the cost to just be able to put them to market, but just have some sort of public subsidy to keep them affordable.
So tell me what that looks like, because what we've been hearing is get rid of the permitting processes and now we can build faster and cheaper. So you're saying that stays the same, but we're going to give some sort of tax incentive?
No, we actually, those things have to be improved. So cutting, time value of money, probably most palpable in the construction industry, right? So how do we look at the permitting processes really getting expedited? And I think there are ways that we can do that. Certainly a lot of technology and innovation that can help with that process, one. Two was looking at being sure that what we're building is actually meeting people's needs. And so that's going to mean, where are we building? I would like to actually bring back some form of redevelopment so that we have more options about how we build. So we can be in a blighted area and actually look at adaptive reuse and preservation rather than building anew, which could cut down on some of the costs. And then looking at, is there a financing mechanism that could actually have these units, because it's always going to be costly. Cost of materials and supplies are going to be pretty stable. Cost of labor is going to be pretty stable. And so you're not going to be able to cut corners with respect to those costs. But on these other process costs, yes. And then also, how do you keep these units affordable? And it could be through tax credit. I've had so many companies come to me to say, we're trying to just attract the best talent. And so we're having to actually put up our own, homeowner assistance programs, for people who can stay with the company for, 4 or 5 years. It's worth it. But would you be interested in looking at a tax incentive for employers to do that? I think everything has to be on the table. The public sector cannot take care of the housing problem in its entirety, period. It has to be a public-private partnership, and we have to look at all of the ways that we can maximize our financing tools and look at all the ways that we can look at the tax system being helpful here too.
As a state, we have failed to build the amount of supply that we need for our population. We've fallen behind. And as a result, prices have gone up. And so we have to build. We have to have supply. Right now, I'm leading a plan that would allow us to build 2 million housing units in every county in the state by the year 2030. This is housing that is specifically earmarked for meeting the needs of our workforce. People who are in the workforce, teachers, nurses, police officers, firefighters, oftentimes have not been the envisioned beneficiaries of the housing. And we have to make sure that we also have workforce for low-income families, yes, and for our workforce. And so these 2 million units are intended to be that as a start.
And how do you build those units? In other words, how do you get around California's many regulations that are part of the reason that the building is slow and expensive?
Well, we do have to lessen the time it takes to permit development. There are some counties in this state where it might take 6 years to permit a development. That is the biggest barrier to building units in our state. But my plan builds on the fact that in every county in this state, there are 75,000 acres of land that is ready for development. It happens to sit on surplus property that school districts own. And so the opportunity is there to build without a whole lot of extra permitting. The districts they don't have to go through the local cities to get it permitted. And so we can build these units and we can allow our workforce to live in what will be affordable units for our workforce. And you can get them on a pathway to being able to have home ownership. We have to provide more down payment assistance program and first-time home buyer programs for Californians to give them a chance to live the American dream. It's slipping away.